Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Park Commission meeting number 482. And I see we do have a quorum. I will ask for, well, 483, so what's the difference? Who cares what number? The first item of business today is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any comments on the minute? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the chairman and I guess Mr. Floyd abstained because we were not here at the last meeting.
Right.
Same thing with the fiscal actions report. Any questions?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the fiscal actions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Project review actions report.
Resolution 2019-11. Whereas the Commission has received and reviewed the project review actions report prepared by the staff and dated April 16, 2019. And whereas the project review committee recommends acceptance of the project review actions report, now therefore be resolved that the Commission directs that the project review actions report be incorporated in the minutes of a full Commission meeting. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the project review actions report. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. First project will be the Class A marina modification, turboat application by Twin Birches Cottage. You want to say something about that, Joe?
Thanks. So this is actually two applications. It's a marina modification requesting the ability to add a charter to Twin Birches. It's also a tour boat application by Devotion Water Sports to operate that charter vessel. I can see Tom Jones here in the audience to represent the application. Tom, if you would mind introducing yourself.
Good morning. Tom Jones, for the record, owner of Devotion Water Sports, representing Twin Birches here. Yeah, we're looking to add a boat charter to our, small operation as of right now. We had a lot of, interest with the guests at Twin Birches, so most of our clientele should be clients of Twin Birches already. So we have plenty of parking and things like that. We have structured tour times, just like we did with the jet ski operation. We find it's easier to manage and things like that. So we like to keep it kind of the same. Same kind of tour route with 2-hour clips going up to about Dome Island and then back down. More of a sightseeing kind of thing, not like we have in the application that we'd like to offer tubing, and I kind of designated some areas of where a potential tubing operation could happen. But more or less, we're just going to be sightseeing. Hopefully, that's the idea of it. I'm not sure if there's any questions or concerns.
Questions? No. Not at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this? Joe, do you have anything to say to the chairman about this?
Well, we visited the site, several of us, and he's been a good operator for the last couple of years, so we didn't see a problem with that. And the schedule for the tour boats is taking it up the lake, away from the congested area.
And Joe, staff, do you have any problem with congestion or anything?
I do not know it's an area that's not known to be congested. They meet all the marina requirements.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Want to call for a vote? Read it.
Okay. Resolution 2019-12, application number 5222-12-19 M1 mod and 5222-13-19 SPT. Applicant is Twin Birches Marina and DevCon Water Sports. Whereas the applicants have applied for permits to modify a Class A marina to offer a tour boat, and whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record, and whereas the Commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, 6 NYCRR 617.5, and as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment, And whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-5.3, public notice has been published and distributed as required. And whereas the applicants have demonstrated that the activity and facility comply with the Class A marina requirements of 6 NY CRR 646-1.2B and tour boat requirements of 646-1.4D2. And whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Second project is a Class A marina modification submitted by Dunham's Bay Road for the, well, it calls it the Dunham's Bay Road LLC, which I believe is the Freedom Boat Club. Am I wrong?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is
You want to say something about
Yeah,
that,
this is
Joe?
an existing Class A marina, formerly known as Dunham's Bay Sea Ray. Recently purchased by Dunham's Bay, or 10 Dunham's Bay Road LLC, we also know as Freedom Boat Club, run by Matt O'Hara. They requested to modify the marina to reduce seasonal berthing spaces from 42 to 14, and to increase boat rentals from 4 to 20, and to add a charter operation. We have Matt Fuller representing the applicant. I'm here to discuss the application and answer any questions you might have.
Good morning. For the record, Matt Fuller with Meyer, Fuller and Stockwell. Yeah, I've got Matt here today. We've done a bunch of work here in the last few months. We closed last fall. We've been by the property. It was a bit tired. So we quickly moved to upgrade the fuel system. And just this past month here, did get the approvals from the town of Queensbury to put in a holding tank system for the septic, which was in pretty rough shape. Slowly, we'll be working through with Finney Design. We're probably back to the planning board in Queensbury starting this month with some site plan changes to the building, upgrades, clean up the property. The application here before you is to essentially move the Freedom Boat Club model from Beckley's over to the Dunham's Bay location. We've gone through the application, I've read the comment letters. It's classified through you guys, for lack of a better term, as rental, but these boats are not for rent. It is a club membership. You take a course, you become associated with the vessels, and you can select the vessel you want to use within your club membership. Pretty successful model, up the East Coast, throughout the country, and doing pretty well here. So, from a traffic standpoint, I saw some of the comment letters. I don't necessarily agree that we're going to have a massive impact to traffic here. It was a marina, it is a marina. The idea that all boats will be on the water every single day, it's just not likely. We do have parking for the facility inside the building, the same that Mrs. Howard was using. Again, through the site plan process, we'll look at whatever upgrades and things like that we can make with the town, but that'll come later when we actually get site plans and things in. I think you guys know the operation from where it was at Beckley's. If I can answer any questions, or if Matt can answer any questions, we can certainly help out.
Questions from commissioners on the... Anybody at the moment?
Well,
Mark?
yeah, I have one question. So, do the amount of members exceed the number of boats that are available to them?
So we have a ratio of members to boats that we keep. So part of the reason we moved was because membership is growing and we want to get more boats to the club. So we do keep a strict member-to-boat ratio for that answer your question, but we do not exceed that each year. So
What is that ratio?
8 memberships per boat.
Okay.
So the final Freedom Boat, number of boats will be X, and not transient boat, but rented slips will be what? The two final numbers.
So between the seasonal and the rentals and the permit, we have 34, so the seasonal slips would be 34 minus number of people.
There's an overall reduction in the number of slips from 42 to, right, 28.
Yep, so there was 46 on the permit, we're taking that down to 34. So there is an overall reduction in the number of boats, which should mitigate some of the concerns about increased traffic on the club.
Was the 46 the old number when
That was the
the
old
Towers
number.
had the boat cover over and?
Yeah, they have 42 seasonal slips and 4 rental boats, so that's what the total 46 comes
Bill?
I don't know whether this is part of our jurisdiction, I'm not sure. When we were at the site visit, we talked about the holding tank, and we looked at the location of it, and it kept crossing my mind. There used to be a tank, and I think it was for fuel, that was painted like a submarine. And I always thought it was down the hill a little bit, but I always thought it was clever to do the submarine thing, but it was kind of unsightly. This holding tank location is farther up the hill, and it's going to be above ground.
So we're excavating as much as we can on that hill, so we're going to attempt to bury it as much as possible.
Oh, okay. And are you bury it and screen it in some way or something?
Yeah, put landscaping around or something to just kind of aesthetically.
Because it's right on the corner as you approach it. It'll really stand out. It'll be the only thing I see. I just know it from driving for years, driving by that.
Yeah. So we talked to the engineers about, again, just kind of aesthetically make that a little more pleasing. But after probably about 8 visits with the engineers and many iterations of the drawings, this was ultimately the place that we had to put it. And the town did the walk with us and that's where it had to go.
Anything else this time?
Did I hear correctly that you're not renting boats? These boats are for the members, is that correct?
Yep, so there's no daily renters, there's no one coming up for the weekend and coming out to joyride on the lake. These are all people that have joined, paid a fairly substantial initiation fee to join the club. They pay ongoing dues, they've gone through our training course, and primarily they're local people who want access to the lake and want to be part of this club. They have a vested interest in the lake the way boat owners do, and not coming up to blue or crashing or get rowdy. The boats are due back at 7 each night, and no one's going to be out, at the boathouse at 10 o'clock, coming back, being loud or causing trouble. It's a respectful membership base that feels like they have ownership in the boats. It's very different from
What style boats are you using?
We've got 12, we want to have 12 in fleet this year. 6 of them would be pontoon boats, 6 would be open bow. We use a mix of different brands, Regal, Sweetwater, Bennington, so they're high quality boats. We turn them for 2 years, so we don't keep anything in our fleet older than 2 years, so we're always in great condition. Not necessarily to be problem boats and then get anywhere.
So, Matt, you're increasing the boats from 4 to 12 this year,
So
even though you had
yes,
20 on the application.
Yeah, just to give us room to.
So this year, you're going from 4 to 12.
Correct.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure about. All right. And then, depending on how the business goes, then you're hoping to add more on in the future.
Exactly.
And 20 is your max, but it won't be 20 this season.
What opportunities?
Okay, and those floating docks that are on the north end,
Yep.
are those for seasonal berthings or for your...
Those are for seasonal.
Those are for seasonal. And are you going to keep those there?
We hope not. We've got a couple different companies quoting some dock.
I would just like to add at this time, Kathy, just for clarification here, when you give him a permit for 20, it doesn't matter how many he's going to add this year, next year, or ever, you're giving him a permit for 20 or 26 or
Yes,
whatever.
I understand that.
Yeah, so it isn't...
I understand that, except I think that going from 4 to 12 instead of 4 to 20 in the course of one season, even though I know that once we've given him 20, that's it, but it would be nice to be able to see what the impact is on a gradual increase than just maxing it out after the first year. If that made any sense on that.
Well, it does, except it makes it a little difficult for a permit. You either give the man a permit for 20 or you give him a permit for 12. You
Yeah, I
can't-
understand
yeah,
that. I
you can't
understand.
really-
I know.
no. It's not that you can't discuss it, but the permit is going to state exactly how many he has. If he decides not to do any, he can do any, or if he decides to do them all,
Right.
that's what his
I
permit
understand
states.
that. Okay.
Okay.
Traditionally, that location's had boat service and boat sales there. Is that in your plans?
Yes, yep, so we'd like that service department continue what Howard was doing. It's nothing that she wasn't doing. And she had a traffic dealer, sub-dealer, for a dealer in Plattsburgh most recently. So we'll see, right? So we'd like to continue that relationship that she had with the traffic dealer as well.
And your gas will be available to the public?
We will, yep.
Oh, I have a
Go ahead.
question.
Sure.
One more question about, when we talked yesterday, you mentioned the fact that your times range like from 9 in the morning till 2 for your members, and then 2, and they have to be back at 7. But you had, would you kind of expound a little bit on how you had, if I hope I understood this correctly, the number of people that go out in the morning from 9 till 2 usually? In other words, you don't get as many for that time of day. So what I'm saying is, then probably, see, tell me if I'm wrong, the boat's not going to go out every day, the 12 of them, from 9 till 2, and then come back in, and then get a whole new set of people and go back out from 2 till 7. You did say that morning time isn't very popular.
Yeah, so on weekdays, between about 30 and 50% of our boats are out on any given weekday. And you're right, more of those in the afternoon than in the morning. Last year, we had 7 boats in the fleet, and in a given Monday through Friday time frame, there were about 20-25 reservations total. So I didn't break out morning and afternoon, but that was about 40% or so of the available reservation slots. Weekend will be busier, but weekend, most seasonal boats are going to be out too, so that's not as impactful relative to how the slip is used versus the weekday. That also answers your question. We'd anticipate somewhere between 30-40% on those weekdays being out.
All your boats are back by 7 o'clock at night?
They'll be back at 7, yeah.
Okay.
We have late fees to make sure that happens.
Any further questions, commissioners? Not at this time, thank you. Someone else here to speak? Carol?
Hi, Carol Collins from Assembly Point. I'm here with my husband as well. I'm very concerned about this application. I just became aware of it, I think, a day ago. And I think it's misleading, and I think we need to take some time and inform a lot of people, because in my short time yesterday and finding out about this and reaching out to a few people who I know are concerned about overcrowding in the southern basin, they were not made aware of this. I know the Park Commission's policy is to inform people with like 500 feet or something like that, right, Joe? I think, as we pointed out with the Harris Bay Yacht Club expansion proposal, it was very important to inform all the people that it affects, and not just the people right next to the marina. And I'd like to point out why that is, and it was very helpful when we took the time to inform people. There's a lot of people that wanted to be here today who are out of town and do feel that this is going to add a lot more congestion to the area. First of all, Dunham's Bay is almost, and I don't mean this to say it against the Dunham's Bay people. So many people from Dunham's Bay have written in and expressed their concern with this operation. But they're almost immune to the problem because they're graced with a 5-mile-an-hour zone. Now, what's happening on Lake George is we're using the 5-mile-an-hour zone to displace the problem. We're transferring something from one place and dumping it on another portion of the lake. Now, in this case, because it's a 5-mile-an-hour zone, it's still crowded, but because of the formula, it doesn't have the over-congested name to it, assigned to it. Just outside of Dunham's Bay, we have a region, 3B, 3G, which are 283% overcrowded. This is what we need to be talking about. These are the findings of the Lake George Park Commission's own study conducted in 2015. We have not responded, we, the Park Commission and its people, have not responded to these grave concerns in, I'm going to guess, 10 regions of the lake. What happens is, you come outside this 5-mile-an-hour region, if anyone's familiar with the lake, and I know Bill Mason, I know Kathy, I know many people who are familiar with this southern basin and how it operates, you floor it. You get outside that 5-mile-an-hour zone, you floor it. You travel along that shoreline, and the waves pound that shoreline. So we're looking at an overcrowding problem and damage to the shoreline. So we have a much bigger problem with this expanded operation. Now we're going to have an intensive use because seasonal users differ from boat club users. Seasonal users may use their boat, 10 times a year, maybe 50 times a year, but they don't use it every day. You just don't. It's just not the way that people do it. Now these boats will be used perhaps twice a day, so maybe these 20 boats will go in and out of the bay 80 times. This is our focus, and this application did not address this. And I don't know if the park commissioners are really aware or have the opportunity. Now, I've spoken with many of you over the years, and I personally know through our conversations that you avoid this area at all costs, this area of the lake. You know it's overcrowded. And we can't keep dumping 5-mile-an-hour zones and say, oh, we're going to take that problem up the lake, like the proposal you just said. Oh, if they're in a congested area, but they're going to head north. That's not fair and safe for the rest of the lake. 283% is, well, I don't know, ludicrous for overcrowding. We need to inform the rest of the people on Lake George what's going on here. We need to examine how far we want to take this. But these people had the right to know that this application is in. We have the right, we need to examine it carefully. We can't just say, oh, well, they're probably not going to do this, or they might not do that. Oh, they're safely trained. Yeah, but you put a lot of people on a lake, that's when problems happen. So, I don't know, probably have more to say. But I'm urging you to table this. Give the people, as we did with the Harris Bay Yacht Club, a chance to respond to what is not a Dunham's, not just a Dunham's Bay issue, but a lake-wide issue, and particularly just outside of Dunham's Bay. Oh, that's a phone call for me. I think I've canceled it. Sorry. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here to speak?
My name is John Collins, Carol's husband, and what I've done is I've just looked at the materials in the application. I don't have the expertise that Carol has, so my comments are based on what I read. And then also what I heard today from the representative of the applicant. And knowing Karen Howard, and knowing the operation that was in existence prior to the sale. So what we have here is we have the Freedom Boat Club who wants to expand their membership, expand their business operation. Yet what I just heard today is keep the tracker boat sales, keep the service department, keep the gas. All fine and good. They acquired the property, they want to create a business, God bless. However, this is a sensitive area, not only from the lake, but from a traffic standpoint. And I would say keep an open mind. You have a young, energetic applicant who wants to take over a business and make himself very successful. Versus Karen Howard, in the later years of her operation, was on a maintenance mode at best. That property had been sold for a long, long time. Young and energetic guy coming in, wants to build sales, build service, build gas, great. That's going to create more activity at the property. Then you layer on top of that the Freedom Boat Club. And just using the numbers that were presented, yes, you're reducing slips by 12, but you're taking out boats that were being used on average 2.5 times a week and bringing in up to 20 boats that will be used 1.5 times a day. That's a factor per boat. That's a factor of use of 4.6 times more use per week than currently exists. The report on the activity of the lake and the overcrowding in the South Basin, that's on the record. There's no dispute about the fact that there is overcrowding. So when you look just at the numbers, you're increasing boat traffic 59% based on the boats that are coming in here. And oh, by the way, 59% of the traffic going in and out. Remember, there were, 46 boats that were being used 2.5 times a week, except for the 4 rental boats. Now, you're 2.5 times a day on a corner on Dunham's Bay Road. Then, let's talk about the holding tank up at the top. Great, we're going to improve septic there. Super. However, when you look at all the increased activity, I haven't heard anything about how many times that's got to be pumped up. And if it's up at the top of the hill by the road, where's the pump out truck going to be? Again, another factor on what's going to impact traffic in this area. So I feel like we need to do a deeper dive on what the impact is on the area from a traffic standpoint, from a boating standpoint. It's clear we're in an overcrowded situation and we're adding to the stress on the South Basin. You might say, oh, come on, you know, it's a big lake, it's 32 miles long. It can handle an extra whatever number of boats per day. But if we take that attitude every time we come with a smaller proposal, that impact is going to build. So, again, I urge the commission to take a deeper dive. And when you look at the impact study, there was conclusion, no impact on the lake. I don't know how you can come to that conclusion given the study that was done on boat traffic, and minimal impact on road traffic when just from their numbers alone says there is going to be very significant traffic. And then to find out the business, listen, I hope that you have a successful business, that Tracker works or whatever boat company or boats you want to sell, that your service is good. God bless America. But we have an overused resource that is being further stressed. And living on Assembly Point, going by Dunham's Bay, we all know that that's a dangerous area to drive. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Arlene Lotters. My husband and I are permanent year-round residents of Assembly Point. Our property is just south of Speaker Heck Island. We are just outside the 5-mile-per-hour zone. I have not had very much time at all to review the application that's proposed by Freedom Boat Club, but what I know of it and what I know of the boat congestion and the almost circus-like atmosphere between Speaker Heck Island and Assembly Point on Saturday and Sunday in July and August, it's crazy. I've witnessed rental boats from the village coming up on the rocks within the dangerous area that's clearly marked just south of Speaker Heck Island, have called Lake George Park Commission. They're up on the rocks. They don't know what they're doing. There's so many boats in that area. We're just outside the speed zone, so the boats are pouring on the power. The wakes are huge that are coming in. We had to install a boat lift. Our boat has been swamped by boat waves coming in, so we have a boat lift. My husband and I don't take out a small pedal boat in weekends especially. We don't take out a canoe on weekends. It's congested. There's noise from 5 a.m. till 11 p.m. It's just such a busy area. Anything else that's put in that area with boating is going to be problematic. I'd like more time to look at the application. I just don't feel really prepared to give substantive comments at this point. I'm an environmental attorney. I worked for New York State Department of Environmental Conservation my entire career. I have concerns for the lake. I love the lake. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I'm Bob Glandon, and I'm on Assembly Point too. And I know the wakes we're talking about here. I had just a chance, because I just found out about this, to look over the application quickly. And there's a couple issues that I think you all should be aware of. And maybe I'd put this out right out front, that you modify, if you're going to approve something today, or hopefully you delay and look at it some more. But when you do approve, that you only approve for, let's say, 10 boats to start with, and then see what happens before. If it's not a big issue, then at a later date expanding to 20 might not be a bad idea to do. But to just jump to the 20, even though they're only going to use 12 the first year, I think you're taking a huge chance. The point I'd like to make on this is there's 8 club members per boat, and they're supposedly local, and there's a list of towns that they're from in the application. But Freedom Boat Works is, there's 150 of these clubs around the U.S., and they all have reciprocal privileges, which means a guy from New Jersey, Freedom Boat Club, can come up here for a weekend and get one of these boats because they have those privileges. So the idea that there's local people that are going to love the lake and not do anything wrong, and I only picked New Jersey because it's down there, not because I was picking New Jersey. It could have been from Missouri, I don't know. So it's not maybe as pure a crowd as we're hoping for. The application has a claim in it that somehow this is actually going to be less traffic on big weekends than the current slip rental, seasonal rentals. And in seasonal rentals, I mean, you can look at it, if you look on the other side of the little bridge in the Dunn's Bay Swamp, all the little motorboats that are in there. And on the good weekends, the big weekends and stuff, and you look back there, and if there's 10 or 20% of those boats out, I'd be surprised. They're just not heavily used. People that have boats use them, I don't know what, maybe, I'm going to guess maybe 5 to 10 to 15 times a year. I know the guys from Adirondack Marine tell me that they've got boats that they put in and take out each year that have less than 5 hours put on them in a year. So they're used, but they're not out for 4 solid hours. If you've got 4 hours, you're going to use all 4 hours, or if you're taking 2 periods, you're going to take all 8 hours because you've got that limited amount. And so on those heavy weekends, all of these boats are going to be out, and if they're out twice, they're going to be coming back and forth versus rentals, normal rentals, and I think the load is going to be considerably larger. And so for the application to say that it's going to be less is, I think, some voodoo math. It's based, I think, on the assumption that on a good weekend, anybody that has a boat on the lake is going to be out on it. And sometimes it feels that way, but certainly looking at the docks, you can tell it isn't. And then I'm familiar with the airplane rental or club business because I have friends who are avid flyers and, wear clubs, and they share, 2 or 3 Cessnas and the like. And on those, with those rentals, you have certain times assigned and you get to use them as part of the club. But if someone doesn't use their time, you can raise your hand and say, I'll take that time also. Now, you pay extra at that point. But so the friends of mine that do this are flying every weekend a couple times, even though they're only allowed to fly once a month, because others don't use it. So the fact that these members are spread out, and a guy's got the Saturday morning time and may not be able to use it because his kid's playing soccer, somebody else who wants to be boating or wants to be fishing is going to take that time. So these things will be used heavily, and I think we're going to see a lot of crowding. Once they come out of the lake and out of Dunham's Bay, that section right outside is not considered today to be over capacity, at least according to the 2015. But that's a big section of lake. The fact is, along the shore, it's definitely crowded. And I'm halfway up where there's a little rock buoy out, and the boats come in tight at that rock buoy every time. They're on their way up to Speaker Heck or up the lake, and the crowd is on the inside. Out by Diamond Island, yeah, it's not crowded there, but if that section was drawn smaller with shoreline versus middle of the lake, the crowd is there, the crowd that other people have mentioned. So I think it's something that we have to be worried about. And since these guys are on a 4-hour rental, if they keep their speed down like they're supposed to at the time they get in it and get out, they're going to spend 20 minutes or so getting out of Dunham's Bay. They're going to spend 20 minutes getting back into Dunham's Bay. So their 4-hour rental, they're going to have about 3 hours out in the lake. And they're going to stay in the South Basin. They're going to be right there. They're going to be looping around in that area. Because if you make the run up to the Narrows, you all know, they've only got a half hour up there to stop at Ice Cream Island or something and then come back. But I think it's going to cause a much larger traffic. And so I would want to mitigate that as much as possible. It's a very rosy projection, and I would say to the extent you're approving something, I would approve a partial, and I'd have them come back after several years of operation and prove that it's not a crowd, because the Beckley's area was pretty crowded in there, and it may be too crowded to keep going there. So it's going to be crowded on the lake, and the road issues are big too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
My name is Rolf Ahlers. I want to affirm what has been said up till now. I'm a neighbor of the Lotters, of Collins and of Glendon. We belong together to a group that is called Assembly Point Water Quality Coalition. The Lake George Park Commission has the obligation to retain the integrity of the lake. So does our small group. We have seen over the last especially over the last 10 years, a major, major deterioration, not only of the lake, but also of the roadways. It is no longer safe, I must say, and I say every day, to even walk or ride my bike on our small road, Knox Road. There's just too much traffic. The integrity of the lake is seriously declining, mainly because of outside agents. Those many, many boats, and we have it has been mentioned how many more boats we have, especially in the southern portion of the lake, are mainly outside boats. These are not people who live permanently around the lake as we do. We don't even have a boat. We care deeply about the lake. We want to swim in the lake. We don't want to cruise around the lake. But we have seen increasingly over the years a major decline, a major increase of boat traffic, and the people, they get there into Dunham Bay, into their boats, and they press and they come much too close to the shoreline. They want to get out on the water. I ask myself, what makes me so different from them? Why don't I want to get on the lake? Why am I satisfied simply with swimming? What I want to say has been said. I don't need to reaffirm it. I want to affirm once again what has just been said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Barbara Sims. I'm a year-round resident on Dunham's Bay. First, I would like to say that there are several of our members who wanted to be here today, but as Carol mentioned, we just learned about the meeting yesterday afternoon, so they were not able to attend. You have several letters from Dunham's Bay residents in your packet. And I would like to reiterate all the things that have been said. I don't want to repeat them, and I urge the committee to table this resolution so there can be more inquiries and more opinions sought. But for your own benefit, I would like to address one item in your packet, and there were some comments that questioned the number of boats and boat traffic that were stated. And I just wanted to let you know that when the Dunham's Bay Association was petitioning for the lengthening or the removing of the buoys further out in the bay, we set up a video camera and recorded the number of boats going in and out of the bay. So I think that you really should take that as accurate information about the traffic that we do see in Dunham's Bay and the difficulty in enforcing the 5 mile an hour limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Does the applicant want to respond to anything at this point?
Thank you. Just a couple of things. There was a comment raised about the pump out and how often it needs to be done. If any of you know Queensberry's code, you have to have a minimum 1 week holding supply. So we have an engineered system for a weekly pump out. That's the minimum that Queensberry will allow you to put on site. So we met that. I did want to offer some anecdotal thoughts. I mean, unless you birthed in a marina, like I do, you aren't always just out and gone for the day. On a busy holiday weekend, I don't know about any of you, but I'm taking a couple family members out, some in the morning, some in the afternoon. I'll have 2 trips to my boat in the marina, back and forth. So to say that, all seasonal births are just in and out for a weekend or for a day is just not true. A lot of this is just anecdotal, subjective comment. The reality is we have an open lake, and the marinas on Lake George are finite. This model, I think, is far superior to a rental boat model. When's the last time you saw a marina application that is actually reducing the number of slips? You guys know what the cost of those is. I know what I pay a year for mine. That's quite a bit of financial loss that the applicant is willing to take here to mitigate against the traffic. The investment that we're making here, we had a public information, a active spill on the site. We've remedied that. We've replaced the fuel tank that was an active leak. We have now, we're in the process, the equipment's ordered to replace what was a failing septic system. Known when we inspected and bought it that we had to replace the septic system. So, the financial investment to turn a tired property here, I think mitigates the change that we're bringing over here. And what I'll give you is also on the actual operation of the boat club, you do have history. They have been on the lake, and there have been 0 complaints with regard to Freedom Boat Club. These are not rental boat owners that just show up from Jersey or wherever you want to classify them from and go buzzing up the lake. They're people who have an investment in the boats so they can come back and use them. So I think, the antidotes that push this off, delay it, it's a tactic that will just delay us further down the road. I think that the proposal for the site works. I think that the respect that the membership has shown to the lake and to the organization, justify, granting the application. Like I said, I don't remember the last time you see a marina show up and ask to reduce the number of slips. I mean, they're worth a lot of money on Lake George. I can give you that. Thanks.
Matt, would you be amenable to the suggestion of reducing the application to 12?
And then to come back next year and
whenever you see what the.
Yeah, we'd be happy to approve the 12 this year.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I'd like to add Matt's comment too. We're also making significant investments in stormwater. There currently isn't stormwater plan there. So we're investing very heavily in the lake in measures to kill the property that was, I suggest most of you would agree that property was not timed to the lake over the last few years, and the investments we're making to change that are extensive, and the boat club model is what allows us to do that and to put business there that takes care of it.
Okay. Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to say something. This is an unusual situation which I have not seen, and I've been here a long time, where many of the people in the audience are asking for a table. Usually it's these guys sitting up here that don't want to make a decision on a table. I'd like to examine that a little more. Is there anything unusual, Joe, as to the time or the amount of time that people have had to respond to this? Because I get a feeling in general that people are unhappy that they haven't had a chance to look at this quickly enough. And it is it's not complicated, it's a pretty simple marina, but it does impact a lot of people, and it impacts a place where we know it's crowded already. And I just want to make sure that both sides of this argument get a chance to look at it. So I'm asking you, in your opinion, and I'm not asking you to put it on back, but in your opinion, is there something unusual here where these people have not had a chance to respond, where we've had much simpler projects, or even that took much longer to get before the commission? That's why I'm a little confused here. Not confused, but surprised.
Sure. So this application came in 2018 in the autumn. Our policy is to go out to roughly 500 feet, so that would have been the minimum that I don't have to notice. I don't have my butters list or map with me, but it went out at least to neighbors within 500 feet late September, early October. Going through the process and making changes, and due to the time that this application was active, We sent it out again for public notice to the same list of folks in late March, early April of this year. So you'll see the comments, some of the comments we received are from last October, some are from the spring, and that's why that is the way it is, because we sent it out twice, again, hoping that people didn't forget about it, and we're on the up and up, and folks are aware of it, and that's still active.
Yeah, and I know you want to say something. Before I do, I would like to ask, I've heard people here say, we haven't had time to look at this. I would like to hear anybody from that group, which I don't want to label, to say, okay, why is the reason you feel that nobody's had a chance to look at this long enough, or there are people that could be here? Does somebody want to?
We weren't notified. 500 feet is not.
Well, I understand, and Carol, you know that is.
I thought you asked
Yeah.
why. But
Yeah, I know. But I'm sure the grapevine gets around. I know, like.
No, this time it didn't.
Yeah, I know.
It just didn't.
Yeah, but.
Barbara, you would know the best, so you should probably respond.
Yeah. Well, I don't think. I know you're not suggesting it, but this commission never tries to put anything over on anybody by rushing it through. I know you're not suggesting that, but I just want to make that clear, which is the reason I'm going into this, is to make sure that everybody on both sides of this gets. And I understand from the applicants, time is money as far as you're concerned for getting this job through. Does anybody else in the commission feel like I'm feeling about this?
Yes.
And I was a little bit surprised that I wasn't hearing comments from the neighborhood, just because it's a change, and I expected a lot. And I received a call yesterday, and I made that statement. I had read the letters, though, and the letters from last fall indicated to me that the network was alive and well, and that because this is what always happens, and it doesn't take many people to know about an application for that network to become active. So it did surprise me. I'm glad that you talked about it, because that was one of my concerns. I am satisfied that we did our job on notice, that shouldn't be our issue, because people didn't rise to it. I think that instead we should take the lack of response as something, although there are plenty of responses, and there are plenty of people in the audience right now that are giving us that input. So,
well, before we even go on, I'll say I'm very uncomfortable. I will be very uncomfortable. We haven't even made voting on this at the present level without a little more further examination. It doesn't mean that staff hasn't looked at it and we haven't looked at it. I'm just totally blown away by the amount of opposition that all of a sudden comes up and says we haven't had a chance to look at this. And they do, whether or not they have a correct argument. I listen to a lot of people make arguments that I say, why am I wasting my time? But they still have the right to make that argument.
If I could, Mr. Young.
And I think at this point I'd like to hear from you why you object to, and I assume you do object to this being pushed on, but...
Well, yeah, obviously we're heading into the season here, and
correct.
To my client's credit, my credit, we applied in the fall on purpose. We did this just so that you don't, because I started working with Matt last year, about this time last year, when we first started looking at the marina. It took us, a good 5 months of due diligence to work through the property. But for just that experience that I've had in 18 years, if you apply in February, there's people that aren't around. We closed in October and immediately reached out to the Park Commission and said, this is what we're planning. We want to get the application started. We know we've got zoning. We had to work through the town, make sure we weren't triggering any zoning requirements, which we weren't. We knew we had DEC with the tank, and primarily we thought what we knew was going to be a concern here was the septic. We knew we had a failing septic system, so we wanted to get through the town. That took design through the winter, test pits and things like that, but we intentionally applied to the Park Commission in the fall to give it as much time as we could, so that because we knew coming into the spring, getting into test pits and finalization of the septic system through the local health of the town board, that we would be close coming in. We knew you wouldn't act without that approval, right? You generally do not act unless you know you have that local municipal approval in your hand. So again, we started the process in the fall to get the public comment out there so that we could work through this stuff and address it, over the winter and be ready to go for the spring season here. So yes, we do have members coming, that obviously we would like to be able to use the facility that so far we've invested in pretty heavily. That's going to continue, and you, listen, we know how if you want to beat a project, delay it. We've addressed, I think, the legitimate concerns of the area. It has been out for months. This isn't a one-week application process or a one-month application process. So I do think it would be unfair, to kick this can down the road on us, particularly when we have history. We have not had a single complaint on the lake. Matt's agreed. You want to up it to 12 this year, see how it goes? Fine. We're willing to do that. Let the study goes. We'll be back through the town. Probably by this time next year, we would be back, because I think we would be back through site plan review by this time next year for improvements to the buildings and things like that we want to do.
Well, I have no objection to it. You've done a good job, and you started early. I feel the staff has done early. That's why I'm having a hard time believing that people didn't get a chance to respond to this, and if they didn't get a chance to respond, I'd like to find out what our problem was so that it doesn't happen in the future. Anybody else on the commission have anything to say on the subject?
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in just for a quick second?
Sure.
So the clear opposition right now is dealing with boat traffic and density and congestion. So the commission is an unbiased third party to this issue, not for, not against. Our job, clearly as a staff, is to give you enough information that you can make an informed decision. So Joe has spent days on this application going through and evaluating what impacts there might be. Yesterday afternoon before I left at 5 o'clock, he was still working on this analysis, so I might ask Joe if he could just give a quick overview for the commissioners, just to say from a mathematical standpoint, based on assessment of the number of boats in the lake and what this might add to it, at least a staff level assessment of that. You haven't had the benefit of reading this yet, I apologize, because we've been fairly overwhelmed with them on projects, but I think it'd be beneficial if Joe can highlight a few things.
Yeah, two things. First, on the public comments, I expected opposition to this. Recommended the applicant get your ducks in a row with wastewater, stormwater, XYZ. In the public comments from last October is a letter from the president of the Dunham's Bay Association, who presented himself as representing 60 lakefront owners. We also have a letter from Mrs. Sims, who represented herself as the chair of the Water Quality. So from the staff perspective, we thought, although it just represents 2 letters, these letters are intended to represent many people who are now seeing right now. So the impression was that we didn't under-notice, doing our typical 500 foot, that it reached the appropriate folks by seeing those comments. We are hearing a lot of comments on boat use, which is obviously, a concern of ours and something that the recreational study spoke to. The 2006 rec study speaks to the difference between rental boats and seasonal berthing customers, or people that hold annual boat registrations. Annual boat registration holders are expected to be on the lake, according to the study, 10 times a month or 2.5 times a week, roughly 0.35 times per day. This application shows or presents that rental boats will be used roughly 1.5 times per day. We heard there's not, you can rent it for 4 hours or 8 hours. There doesn't seem to be a disincentive to do it for 8 hours. Matt suggested it might be 1.5 times per day per rental, which is certainly an increase above a seasonal berthing customer, which is predominantly what we have at this facility right now. So certainly we're going to see an increase in boat trips based on the rec studies, roughly 13 to 14 boat trips from this facility every single day during the week. In the context of Dunham's Bay, which this is what I was doing last night, looking at all our records and the rec studies, is the total number of vessels in that bay from the 3 marinas and the residential docks, assuming 1 boat per dock, which is relatively conservative. Not taking into account the public launch, which based on our AIS inspection numbers could be as much as 100 launches per day. If it takes, if half the boats that get inspected on a weekend go through that launch, that would be 100 boats on a weekday. Works out to about 35, looking at our numbers between June and September of last year. Overall, this increase in boat use, daily boat trips, would result in roughly 7 to 8% increase in the context of total traffic in that bay, looking at all the numbers of existing authorized uses and docks in the bay.
That assumes 20, right?
What's that?
That assumes 20.
That assumes 20.
20.
Yep. So that would be on a weekday, which, so the contrast would be the greatest because things are slow during the week.
Right.
Annual boat holders are only going out, maybe once every 3 days. So 7 to 8% increase daily weekday. On the weekend, when maybe more, seasonal registration holders are going out more, maybe they're going out 0.5 times per day, getting into the numbers, and we've got more launches, that number starts to drop down to 5% or 3% relative increase. But overall, the numbers are, between a 7 and 8% increase on a weekday is what would be experienced in that day.
I'm not in favor of tabling this. I come right out and say it, because
Okay.
I think that the staff...
Nobody's made that motion.
No, I know
yet.
that, but I'm just saying that the staff has done good due diligence. They have received, and you can look in the records of receiving the letters from organizations that represent the people in Assembly Point and the surrounding areas. The applicant has already done significant improvements in the property and are obviously good stewards of the lake because they're doing much better stormwater and wastewater treatments. If we could reduce it to 12, and I think that that would be a good compromise here that would allow the applicant to move forward, and we certainly can always bring back the applicant if there is a problem. And the rec study indicated that outside the 5-mile zone, it's under capacity. So, that's the facts that we have in front of us. And like I said, we've received letters back in the fall from organizations that already, I assume they communicate with each other. It's not just one individual.
We might as well go around the table here. Mr. Nishaw.
I can't disagree with anything that was said here this morning. My thoughts in that whole presentation included Gore Mountain, Whiteface Mountain, the Cascade Lakes, the John Brook parking area, and so on. You know where I'm going with this. Over the years, this area has depended on tourism as their major industry. And we're at a stage now where it worked. We're having trouble finding enough parking spaces for the hikers, for the 46ers. We're having trouble on weekends. If you're a skier, you don't go to Gore Mountain on the weekend. You wait for Monday to Friday. You know what I'm talking about. We're reaping a bit of a whirlwind here because of our efforts to promote tourism and our major industry. And we get to a situation like this, and in trying to deal with this major problem of overcrowding, by focusing on one individual and saying, you're the cause of the congestion, that I can't buy. Everybody that's part of this lake is contributing to the congestion. So I have a little trouble trying to focus on one application as to saying, you're the one that's causing the congestion, so we're going to say no. So I don't think we can go down that road. That's my thought.
Mr. Parker.
Yeah. I've been on the lake for 40 years, owned a home on the lake for many of those years, and our home was on a busy bay on the west side. But I also know that there's been a marina in the corner of Dunham's Bay since the first day I hit Lake George. And so Howards were good friends of ours. They were clients of my old company. And I was a customer. I bought a few boats there. And I've been in Dunham's Bay an awful lot of times, and I agree, it's busy. But we must remember that those limited use bays that are located around the lake are not 5-mile-an-hour bays. They are no wake zones, and this park commission has nothing to say about where they are and how they get designated. That's the municipality that the particular spot on the lake borders, town of Queensbury, town of Bolton, town of Lake George, etc. But having said that, we're going from what I've always known as an extremely well-run, but yet busy marina. The Howards were the leading sea ray dealer in the nation. I'll bet you they demoed a lot of boats on the lake. And if you want to talk about boat traffic in those days, it was in and out, but with no wake. Granted, when you hit outside and the lake opens up, yes, a lot of people do the Oompas, but not everybody does. So if 5 or 10% of the people that exit the buoys do put the throttle to it, that leaves 90% of us that are saying, hey kids, you having fun? We're going to tube in a little while as you get outside. So Jim's right, you can't paint the paintbrush here. It's the history, the Dunham's Bay. And I'm as amazed as someone who made the reference that the large marina under the bridge, we call it, and you go by there on a Saturday and Sunday, how many boats are really there that aren't being used? And those are probably the local people that, like myself, we didn't do a lot of boating on, I don't ski on Gore on weekends. We didn't do a lot of boating on holidays. I also, it's just the tourism, etc. But this is not a new problem. This is not a new issue to Dunham's Bay. I believe it's a reduction from the Howard operation, I really do. You won't notice it as much because they had the unfortunate issue of whatever reason that the marina business at that location slowed down. We then get, it's like stopping smoking or stopping using sugar. We soon get used to that, and it's a shock when it comes back for you. So this is a good use for that property.
Kathy?
Well, I'd like to say that the Freedom Boat Club is a vehicle to allow people, responsible people, access to the lake, people that can't afford a home on the lake or and want to participate in all the nice things that the lake offers. So it's nice that there is something like this for the average person to be able to get out onto the lake and be responsible, okay? One of the things that I got a big wake-up call, being from Hewlett's Landing all my life, about 5 or 6 years ago, my husband and I decided, you know, let's get a boat and put it down at the southern end of the lake, and that way we won't have to travel a whole hour to get on the lake. Like if we want to play golf, we can, you know, maybe go out in the lake and take a swim after and not have to do that horrible hour drive up to Hewlett's. And if we do want to go up to Hewlett's, we could take the boat up and enjoy the lake on the way. Well, I'll tell you something. We bought a 21-foot boat and docked it in Dunham's Bay, and I could not believe how the other boats and the size of the boats on the lake and the wakes of the boats on the lake dwarf that 21-foot boat. And I still have my dad's 1970 Boston Whaler, which is a 17-foot at Hewlett's Landing, that I thought a boat like that was fine for the lake. So there are other factors that we've all contributed to make things unpleasant on the lake, and one of them is the increase in size of the boat. So now we got a bigger boat, okay? And we don't keep it in Dunham's Bay anymore. We keep it farther up the lake. But I have mixed feelings about this. I definitely think that I would like to put the cap at 12 at this point and then have the applicant come back. There's all kinds of opinions on this, and I certainly appreciate the people that live along the shoreline. It's too bad that people can't come out of the lake and go right up the center instead of hugging that shoreline. I very seldom, on a weekend, just like Ken said, as far as skiing or whatever, we get in the boat at 10 in the morning before all the traffic gets on the lake and head up, head north and stay away from the southern basin. But you're right, if you've got a 2 in the afternoon to 7 in the evening time frame, it's going to take almost 45 minutes on either end to get out of that bay. People coming out of there are going to hang out in the southern basin of the lake because they just don't have the time to go farther north. Maybe a good compromise would be, instead of going from 9 till 2 and 2 to 7, give those people a longer time frame to be out in their boat. So they, so maybe you can alleviate the traffic in the southern end of the lake. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
There's advantages going after a bunch of commissioners instead of being first. I can agree with a lot of what was said. Also add, over the years, I've issued a lot of approvals, and you're never fully comfortable with an approval, but that's no reason to deny it. On the other hand, without a firm reason to deny a permit, it should be approved. So in the case of this application, it's to me, very complicated from, a perspective of not being on the lake a lot. And, when I am, I'm in the north on purpose. And I believe that we should give this individual a chance. I'm all for promotion of business on the lake. It's part of the lake. And I believe the model is of a responsible ownership and use. I just see no firm reason I can put my finger on that would cause me to say this wouldn't be appropriate or approvable.
I'm somewhat familiar with the Freedom Boat Club. When I tried down in Florida to rent one of their boats, and they told me that I had to go to a class for 3 days, and I said, what do you mean? I'm a Coast Guard captain. And they said, doesn't cut it with us. So they are very good, very stringent with their training, and I think that's the kind of operator we'd like to see on the lake. I think the commission has done a good job in informing the public about this. This was something that was just not brought in and trying to be snuck through. And I think that the applicant is being above board by saying, hey, we'll agree to 12 boats instead of 20. And by the way, we are cutting down on the number of boat slips, which is a rarity. We've never seen that, I don't think, in front of us. And I think one of the big issues with some of the people who have spoke today is not so much of what's going on in the bay, but when they get out of the bay, they accelerate and take off. I checked with our police chief, and he says that there is a state law, not a park commission law, but a state law that you cannot be any faster than 5 miles an hour if you're within 100 feet of shore. Now, we put in with the PCBs the 500-foot limit. Maybe 100 feet's not enough. Maybe we have to increase the footage of operating at a higher speed to 200 feet or 300 feet. But, that's something in the future. But I think that we have to allow this endeavor to go forward.
Bill.
I could talk for a long time about this application. Every single thing that we do as a commissioner, as commissioners, is a balance. I was very impressed with almost everything that was said by the public here, and I've often said that the thing that impacts me the most in viewing a variance application is what do the neighbors think? Because you guys have to live with it. We all do, really, in the southern basin, but the neighbors are the ones who either suffer or benefit, and so I like to listen to them. And on the other hand, the balancing part for me is, I think looking at this application and knowing what the potential could be for the Dunham's Bay Marina in the future, if it were a fully operational marina with sails and so on, and I often expected that that's exactly what we would see there, that somebody would take it over and it would explode, and all we'd have was complaints, because no one would be happy. They want the service, but they don't want it to be too successful. And I get all of that. This one, on the other hand, seems to me, the statements that have been made about the Freedom Boat Club and so on, these are not our typical rental customers. They're quite a step above that. So that's a good thing. The amount of investment that the company has already put in the property when we did our site visit, I was impressed with. I really have nothing. I could improve upon it, but that would be silly because they've really already invested a ton of money improving septic, improving the fuel tank situation and so on. And I'm equally impressed that they're willing to decrease to 12 for this year, and that will give us a chance for the neighbors to get a look at it for a year and see where it's going. So I could vote for it if it was reduced to 12.
Thank you. I agree with one thing big time. You said that these are not, and I know I'm going to get blasted for this, but these are not the normal boat renters that hop in the other marinas that haven't even been on a boat before. I, for one, based on the statistics that Joe has come up with and everything, I don't feel that there's going to be an increase in congestion. I really don't. I feel that cutting down the number of boat slips is going to be more important than the fact that these are rented. I agree with you. I think that Freedom Boat Club has done a good job. And my concern, as I stated earlier, was that I wanted to make sure that there was an adequate time frame here. And this project has been going on since last fall, really. And I can hear what some of the people said they just found out about it. Well, that happens all the time. Sometimes in Hewitt's Landing, you think that there's a wireless in every house, but some people don't even know, hey, what's he doing with his house? You know, I don't know, he's been doing it for a year. So I myself can't find, and I don't agree with telling the applicant or asking the applicant to cut it down just because that sounds like an appeasal type, just saying, okay, if you cut it in 12, we'll pass it. It's like giving out half the cake to somebody just to make it more palatable. Either it's good for 20 or it's not good for 20. So I would approve it as it is. Anybody else?
Well, Mr. Nishaw once said that with a lake, you get boats. With boats, you get marinas.
What's that got to do with it?
So I blamed it on him. I thought it was great intelligence.
Well, I understand marinas are part of it, and the problem that this commission is always faced with, if you're going to philosophize at this point, is respecting the individual's right to enjoy what they've always had versus somebody's right to make money on the lake, and they both have to be equally balanced out.
I'd like to hear a resolution.
Well, I've heard 12 from all the commissioners, right?
Well, you can easily make an amendment to the resolution if you want to see if it passes.
Resolution 2019-.
Wait. Does anybody want to make an amendment to the resolution?
The amendment would be to 12.
And before you make an amendment to decrease it to 12, you you have to have the agreement of the applicant that he's willing to reduce it to 12. Otherwise, he says, no, I want to go for 20 or nothing.
Do we then kick up the other number, though, if he agrees?
I'd rather ask the applicant first before we put out something.
Again, Matt Boyd for the record, we're perfectly fine with 12 and coming back in the fall for next spring if we believe that the business will warrant going up. It may not go from 12 to 20 in a year, it could go 14 or 15. So we're fine with 12 for this year, and we have the track record to prove.
Does anybody want to cut it to 12?
Yeah.
Yes.
I vote for 12.
You make a motion.
I make a motion.
To amend
amend the applicant to 12 Freedom Boat.
I second that.
All in favor of cutting it down to 12?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Read your resolution.
Resolution 2019-12, application number 5222-12-19M1 mod. Is this for the Dunham's boat? Yeah, this is it. Application number 5234-48-18 M1 mod. Applicant is 10 Dunham's Bay Road LLC. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit to modify a Class A marina to reduce the seasonal berthing by 28 vessels and increase the motorized rentals by 16. The Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the applications, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the Commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act of 6 NY CRR 617.5, and as lead agency for the purpose of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment. And whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-5.3, public notice has been published and distributed as required. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the facility complies with the Class A marina requirements of 6 NY CRR 646-1.2B. And whereas the Commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application as proposed with 12 Freedom Boat rentals. So moved.
Second. Matt?
It's been moved.
We clarify one thing, I want to make sure we're not losing 16 slips right now. Because if
We didn't say anything about slips, we said rentals.
Well, no, but if you drop, we've already agreed to drop 8. If 8 more come off going from 20
They're coming
down
off
to
your
12,
rental.
that's 16 slips.
They're coming off your rentals, not your slips, sir.
The proposal would just be 34 slips.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Good try, though. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next application is by the Solemn Marisi down on Lake George for a marina amendment. Joe?
Let's see.
Did I miss one?
Yep, looks like we're...
This is Rockledge.
Looks like Rockledge. Yeah, so this is an application for a new Class A marina offering 10 seasonal berthing slips. There is a companion application for new docks that we received and are reviewing as well. And I can see Chris Gerard from the Dock Doctors is here to represent the applicant.
Thank you and good morning. It's on. Good morning. Yep. Chris Gerard from the Dock Doctors on behalf of Rockledge, Salim and Mercy. Also with me this morning is Karina Martino from Martino Engineering for any upland questions or support that you may have for the application. Starting with a little bit of history on the property, if you've been there before, is it's kind of distinguished with a To the north side, a green boathouse with a couple dock fingers over there. And then on the far south side, which I'll relate to, is what I call the beach area. I think we were here back in 2010, looking at a similar Class A marina application, and for some upland and residential building purposes, we actually removed the application. Since then, Salim and his wife have built their home. They've basically looked at doing upgrades to the property, removed the old motel from up by the road. So slowly but surely getting there. Their focus now with their docks is to basically remove as much non-conforming stuff over on the north side by the boathouse, keep the boathouse, and basically replace 2 of the fingers. Right now, that facility over there would accommodate roughly 7 boats, including one in the boathouse. The current application would be for 5 boats on that side. 2 of those boats would actually be counted towards the Class A marina, which is asking for 10 boats in total. On the south side, you'll see 2 docks, virtually, I guess, U-shapes. On that side, there would be a total of 8 boats. So the application does ask for 10 commercial A annual rental, and the owner would like to retain 3 slips on the boathouse dock. Class A marina brings up a lot of questions. I think it's fairly important to point out that there won't be any traditional services. There won't be any boat storage on premise. There won't be any trailer storage on premise. There will be no mechanical offerings, no fuel, no pump out. Pump out's been agreed upon with the Boardwalk Marina. Looking at it, because it is Salim's home, he has asked for basically hours of operation May 1st through October 31st, hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There are 15 parking spots being proposed up at the top where the old mansion used to be. Really, it's going to require minor grading, but no added improved surfaces. There will be 2 55-gallon receptacles, one on the beach side, one on the boathouse side, as well as a dumpster up by the tennis courts. Working with the town on that, we have agreed to go ahead and put some screening and some security around that dumpster to make sure if there's any overflow issues, that's not going to blow around and towards any of the neighboring properties. For the time being, he would like to install 2 porta-johns up by the parking area as well. Those will be set back towards the back side of the shed, so they're not in view of the lake or anything like that. So again, working with the town, we are going to put some kind of containment building around that, or shed, so to say, structure to A, soften the edges, and B, just kind of blend it in aesthetically. Salim's focus on this is not to have active recreation on shore. He really wants people to arrive at the property, get on their boat, go out, use it, come back and leave. Within his contract, working with Dan at the town, they'll be putting some conditional uses on his boat slip agreements as well. So I think that's what I've got to cover. Looking at the boathouse side, we are shortening the docks that are kind of being resculpted, replaced over there. So we're shortening them, and we are squaring them up with the boathouse, and which is actually rotating them more to the south, which will actually improve a little bit of their impeding on the property line or the setback as well. So, other than that, that's what I've got. Thank you.
Any questions? I have a question for the walkway going down to the docks. What's the depth of some of the stairs, and you're going to have 6x6s around? That wasn't in the drawings.
Corinna Martino for the record. We're looking at timbers that could range anywhere from 6 to 9 inches for a step. They wouldn't necessarily be embedded at full depth, but there's 2 different types of stairs proposed. One is in kind of a fill situation, which will be placed above ground, and the other would be cut into the earth slightly, but we're looking at kind of that range between 6 and 9 inches.
So the depth would be 6 to 9 inches?
Correct.
And what would the fill be? It'd still be all...
Approximately the same. And that would be boarded on the sides to contain the stone, so depending on how the grading works.
Okay.
On the north side, the boathouse side, you're removing that section that's fairly large to the big rock. Are the other docks, you say they're going to be shifted, are you rehabilitating those existing docks?
I think that'd be the best word for it, is rehabilitating. We are going to replace them.
Oh.
So we're going to rip everything out.
They look a little shaky.
We're going to rip everything out from the boulder right to the boathouse, including the dock finger coming off the boathouse. And then the replacement over there will be a new finger kind of extending off the boathouse. And then a little bit of L shape coming along the shoreline like you see now with one additional pier. So ultimately you're getting rid of a dock worth of shape and square footage on that side. But we'll be removing crib and we'll be putting a pile supported system back in.
Is that dock complex just for the owner's boats, or are there seasonal berthings there too?
Proposed on the application, there'll be 2 annual rental slips on that side.
2, and then the other can only hold 8.
Correct, 8 on the south side.
That's what I thought.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak on that one? Hey, we're down to ourselves. We have no, the school teachers aren't here. Let's do this. Joe?
We visited the site, and I think everybody is amenable to the suggested applicant has made for improvements. As you mentioned before, we looked at this about 7, 8 years ago, maybe longer. And this seems to be a better solution that they've come up with. So,
anybody else have any comments on it?
Well, I need to make a comment, Chris, regarding permitting from DEC. In Lake George, the Office of General Services regulates the underwater lands. They've exempted through regulation any of that regulatory authority when there is jurisdiction by the Park Commission under Article 43 of the Conservation Law. However, they didn't quite pull off that streamlining effort with DEC, so when it exceeds our exemption, in the absence of OGS approval, we now have jurisdiction. So, in the short, this requires a permit from DEC for docks and moorings under our docks and moorings regs. It's rather perfunctory. The whole idea of our relationship with the Park Commission in Lake George was to delegate and streamline efforts that they have the authority over docks, but things slip through. So I can talk to you later about an application. Yeah.
And if you want to make that a condition, that I make sure I get that permit through DEC, I'd be more than happy to do that before.
I'd rather...
However you want to do it.
From DEC's perspective, I think we'd rather wait till it's okay by the Park Commission before we go ahead and authorize.
No problem with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Joe?
Resolution 2019-14, application number 5222-9-19M1. Applicant is Salami Amaresi. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit to operate a Class A marina offering 10 seasonal berthing slips, and whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the applications, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record, and the Commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NYCRR 617.5. As lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment, and the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3. Public notice has been published and distributed as required, whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the facility complies with the Class A marina requirements of 6 NYCRR 646-1.1-1.2D. Whereas the Commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above applications as proposed. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next one is for the tour boat application by Amerisi.
This is two companion applications. One for a tour boat by Sunset Charters, which currently operates one pontoon boat sightseeing charter out of Surfside Marina. And it's also an application to modify the existing marina use to add a second tour boat and also to add 9 non-motorized rental vessels, 5 stand-up paddleboards, and 4 kayaks. Tom Horn of Sunset Charter is an authorized agent and here to discuss the application.
For the record, my name is Tom Horn. I operate Sunset Boat Charters. Just to make clear, the paddleboards are Surfside field, so I'm separate from that. I just want to add another pontoon boat to my tour. Basically, I need to take on a little bit more business. The business is there. Mainly it will be to, take on folks from the surf side, in addition to my current customers already. As far as that goes, everything else is going to be the same business model as I'm already doing. Leaving the southern basin, again, heading north, getting into the more pristine and nicer areas in the lake, letting people swim, taking them out to eat, blah, blah, blah. Same 24-foot pontoon boat. For sure, one less rental boat and one more charter with an operator. Doing the right thing out there is, going to benefit everybody in the lake in general. And that's...
Anybody got any questions?
No.
Thank you, sir. You want anybody else to speak?
I'm sorry, I have one question.
Okay.
Looking for a comment. You're obviously right there, bang in the village, and coming in and going out with your boat. How serious is it with, there's just a lot of people there in July and August in the water and congregating around. Obviously...
There's a lot of people. You take it slow, and I have a horn that I blow if somebody is not paying attention because I found that that's what needs to be done. Some people are pretty oblivious, but taking it slow and going in and out and paying attention is of the utmost importance for myself and everybody else.
Common sense every day.
Sure, for sure.
Thank you.
Hasn't been a problem, in other words.
Those same people drive cars too.
It's crazy how people just...
Unaware.
Yeah, I don't know what they think sometimes, but...
They don't.
Thank you. It's unreal. It's unreal sometimes.
Bruce, Father Confessor. Bruce, we had when we visited the site, a number of commissioners made the suggestion to restrict the paddle boats to the 5 mile zone and not go further south than Boardwalk. And I don't know, hey Joe, is that in the application that restrict the paddle boats to no further south than Boardwalk and within the 5 mile zone?
It's not. I believe the current marina condition is that the non-motorized rentals stay in the 5 mile an hour zone. We did, you might see in your application materials, I asked Lieutenant Johns to chime in on this, give his recommendation. He suggested that these not be allowed to go south of the Boardwalk restaurant just because things become so congested down there. It hasn't been presented or proposed by the applicant, but that would...
Well, we'll let the applicant tell us about it.
That would be the suggestion.
Hi, how are you? First, I'm sorry for my appearance. We had a major leak in the hotel at 3 a.m. this morning. So I thought I would get a chance to go home and change, so I apologize. I am Chris Dawson. I'm the general manager at Surfside on the Lake. The application is for an increase not in paddle boats. It's for paddle boards.
Right.
Stand-up paddle boards, which they don't make it out of the, they pretty much stay in that inlet. Paddle boats, we tell them not to go out far because they don't realize how tired how tiring it is to paddle, with the paddle boats. So we tell them to try and stay close, and they pretty much stay in that, in the calm water. We've had a few kayaks maybe try to be brave and go out, but the water's a little rough out there, so we have somebody down there, an attendant, that actually, there's rules to try to keep them. You have your occasional person that doesn't follow the rules, and we've had to go pick up their kayak because they couldn't take it back, and but we're just looking to add the paddle boards.
Oh, okay. So it's 9 paddle boards, that's all you're adding?
Yes.
And
there's a couple of more kayaks that we added. When we did the count, Mr. Thuen, when we did the count, I went down to, when we were doing the application, saw that there was, I think there was 2 more kayaks than what was on that previous, that had been an application that's kind of copied every year. And I went down to make sure that it was all the correct numbers that would be there.
So then what should we change this to? It says 5 SUPs and 4 kayaks.
That's 5 stand-up boards.
Yeah.
And 5 kayaks, right?
5 kayaks.
Whatever's on the paper.
4, 5.
It says 4 here.
Yes.
So that's what we're going with.
Yes. 4 paddle boats, right? Isn't that 4 paddle boats?
No, 4 kayaks and 5 SUPs.
That's what we're adding, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got the joke.
Okay, resolution 2019-15, application number.
I'm sorry, Joe, can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Did you guys want to make a comment?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's right here.
Okay.
They're making a comment. They want to make a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aye.
Good morning. My name is Kitty Rooney. I live at the Lockley Homeowners Association, and I'm the property manager of that association. In regard to this application, we're not so much concerned with Mr. Horn's application for the paddle boats or the kayaks, but we were concerned when we got the Park Commission's background synopsis report regarding the project. And I know you have a letter on file from my sister, actually, and brother-in-law about that, and I'd just like to reiterate some of our concerns. We were disturbed by the Park Commission in their synopsis report advocating the English Brook Delta as a good destination for these paddle boats or kayaks. That was stated in the synopsis. We need to kind of let you know, which you already do know probably, is that the land along the delta, the entire English Brook Delta, is privately owned. And it's all within the town and village of Lake George, and we use signage to indicate that it is private on our shore. Yet, on an average weekday, we get 10 to 15 paddle boats, kayaks, paddle boards, who congregate in the shallow waters 10, 15, 100 feet from our shore, in direct violation of the Park Commission's 200-foot regulation. We have called, we have asked, we have gone to the motels and asked them to respect that 200-foot Park Commission regulation. And that has not been the case. So we would ask the Commission to use buoys to indicate some kind of markage from 200 feet from our shore. We have made this request in the past as well. We're not against his business venture. We're against the way that it is being directed, and also to try to do something about respecting the Park Commission regulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Kate Breslin, and I live at 36 English Brook Road, which is right at the English Brook Delta. And I'm one of the people who enjoys the lake on Saturdays and Sundays because I work full-time in Albany still. So I'm here when it's really busy and really crazy. And I too am concerned about the Park Commission's kind of identifying English Brook Delta as a good place for kayaks and paddle boards to recreate, because that's where I sit, and it's not unusual, and as I said, I'm usually there on the weekends. It's not unusual to have 20 kayaks and paddle boards out in the shallow water, and people coming up and using the shore there, and there's some grass, to go to the bathroom. Sometimes kayakers have their dogs with them, and dogs won't, use the water to poop, so they bring them up onto the shore so that they can poop there. And it is marked private on the land, but as Kitty said, it would be helpful. I too this is an opportunity for us to sort of identify to you a problem that's ongoing. And I love kayaks and paddleboards, but it's a problem, and it's bringing trash. It also we also end up with people mooring out there now, so they see all the kayaks and paddleboards hanging out, and then now we have people also dropping anchor out there. So my request to you is to consider sort of the repercussions of all of this, and consider some sort of buoys, and also asking these businesses, the hotels, the other folks who are renting these things, to remind their customers of the Lake George Park Commission rule about recreating within some distance of shore. So I'm open to your suggestions as well, but buoys and then also enforcement. On the weekends, it's impossible to get any kind of enforcement. I try and call, but I don't know. I don't know if those calls get answered on the weekends.
They do. They do. Yeah. And you're correct. To do any of that stuff within 200 feet of shore is illegal.
Yeah, I just get tired walking out there.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
If I could, thank you for your comments. With respect to the area being good for paddling, I try not to advocate for projects. Just for the record, my language was, the location provides physical features that provide a relatively protected area for paddle sports within the village. So recognizing the village is very busy and dangerous, physically with the delta and the way the bay is shaped, it's protected, not necessarily good. So I just want to clarify that. Joe, I don't know, I asked Joe, because we received a comment about recreating within 200 feet, and I know that's confused me sometimes, whether folks, what is recreating from a vessel versus anchoring and all that kind of stuff. Joe, if it's not too much trouble to bother you, can you kind of clarify how that's administered?
Yeah, the way we administer it is you can't anchor within 200 feet shore. As far as paddleboarding, kayaking, you can use right up to the shoreline. Swimming, you can't stop people from swimming. They can't go up on private property, things like that.
And that's sort of the balance between navigation law.
Right, it's a vessel regulation.
Yeah.
But the vessel can be you can motor within.
Right, well, there's always a right of passage on water. There's always a right of passage on water, but you can regulate some of the activities of the vessel. But a paddleboard isn't a vessel. And I mean, you could be, having a right of passage 10 feet from shore and fall off it. Now are you breaking the law by falling off it? I mean, it's really hard to deal with something like that from a navigation law.
But those aren't the real issues. The real issues are the people who are there and then go on my private property.
Right.
To trespass and do things that I don't want them doing there.
Exactly.
That's the real issue. It's not whether, it's a result of the people being there, but you can't stop the passage. And the anchoring you can stop if it's within the lane.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. As I read it, the regulation says there can be no recreating. It doesn't say clearly only anchoring and mooring. The word used, I believe, is recreating.
It says recreate from a vessel. I think that's where Mark was going into the vessel.
It's all vessel.
Recreate from a vessel.
Okay, so if that's the case, recreating from the vessel means getting out, pumping it over, sitting down, having lunch, 20, 30, 40 feet from private land would be against the regulation.
Kayaks aren't vessels?
Actually, by our reg,
They are.
they would be considered a vessel.
Yeah.
It's any
Oh,
boat
yeah.
or any description of a watercraft with or without a motor by commercial use.
Is there a practical solution to this, Joe?
Yeah. You're talking to that Joe back there.
Yes, I am.
Hey, Joe, jump right on it, pal. Jump right on it.
It's like sitting in a bar with a ball game behind you.
The easiest bet would be to ask the people that are, providing these paddleboards and kayaks, to describe the area and say, that is private,
Respect private property.
respect private property.
Do the motels on the Gold Coast talk to each other?
Why don't we let the operator say something?
No one has ever come to me and said that there was ever an issue.
But you're,
If I knew that, you can write that in a report, that would be great.
We've gone to the lake out, we haven't come to
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
But you're not
You
alone.
only have a certain amount, but you say 20 kayaks are out there, that's people
Get in the
congregating
middle of this.
from other hotels.
Why don't we get all together?
Let them argue.
Communicate with all of those.
Okay, Joe.
Well, yeah, you have to have it where
What, okay.
rotation events, you
The
have to
overall
wear
picture too
life
is,
jacket.
as we see this happening more and more each year, not just from kayaks, but also then they follow suit with motor boats, is, I particularly don't want another Sandy Bay in the South Basin. And so we're trying to request anything you can do to help us would be greatly appreciated. We'd really like some kind of marking that would indicate because it isn't one boat, it's like 20.
Thank you.
But this is the
Thank you.
DEC buoys, not the park commission.
Joe, you're on.
Okay, resolution 2019-15, application number 5222-14-19M1 mod 5222-15-19 SPT. Applicant is Surfside on the Lake and Sunset Charters. Whereas the applicant have applied for permits to modify Class A marina to offer an additional tour boat and 9 non-motorized rental vessels. And whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to State Environmental Quality Review Act, 6 NY CRR 617.5, and as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment. And whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-5.3, public notice has been published and distributed as required. And whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the activity and facility comply with the Class A marina requirements of 6 NY CRR 646-1.2B and tour boat requirements of 646-1.4D2. Whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application as proposed. So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And the last project is Brody's Lakeside Marina application.
This is an application for a dock modification at the facility we're most commonly referred to as Gilchrist. Now it's Brody's Lakeside. It's under new ownership. And they requested a variance to maintain existing dock that exists, which the prior owner constructed in violation. There's currently an order on consent that's been signed to have the offending portions of dock removed by sometime in June. But we afforded them the opportunity to come and request a variance to maintain those portions of dock.
So the docks are in question were put in place by Gilchrist maybe 20 years ago. Nobody really knows exactly for sure. I don't know if you guys have aerial, but, so what we're proposing, when we purchased it, we discovered shortly before our purchase, while we're under contract, that these docks were not compliant. And so what we would like to do is use the moorings to reconfigure to try to keep these existing docks. There appears to be no mechanism within the Lake George Park Commission to use the moorings as a reconfigurement tool. So Dave and Joe, we kind of came to an impasse there as far as trying to existing docks, using the moorings as existing square footage to use to reconfigure, and that led us to here. So what we would like to do is to keep the non-compliant docks, and we just don't know. We'd like to use the moorings and trade that space with the non-compliant docks, but obviously there's no pre-prescribed mechanism to do that.
So we're looking at, we'd be willing to give up 3 moorings in order to keep the 3 docks that are non-compliant. Different lengths on each one. One's 2 feet, one's 13 feet, and the other one's 15 feet.
Okay.
Well, the total is 50 feet, right?
Total is 50 feet. Yeah.
So it's more than what you mentioned.
It is, but I mean, we don't know. What is the mooring for?
You were aware of the consent order prior to purchasing the property, right?
We were. We had been under contract, I don't know, for 6 to 8 months, maybe, before we discovered it. It was never disclosed by the seller. We discovered it shortly by inquiring with the Park Commission.
Anybody else have any questions for this moment?
The appraisal of the property was reflecting what the configuration is in the Park Commission.
The appraisal was reflecting the permit.
Which was the configuration in the Lake George Park Commission.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Okay. Nobody has any more questions?
Well,
You have a question, Bill?
Well, maybe just while the applicant is here, we did visit the site for quite a while. We talked about it, and it appears, I'm sure that you're always doing work on the docks and so on, and maybe you've got a large rebuild in your not too distant future. I'm not sure, but it looked like there was some work that you might want to do at some point. I'm not saying, casting aspersions of the quality of your dock, but I was just thinking, and staff discussed a possibility of reconfiguring, that maybe you've got an awful lot of square footage of docks. It would seem to me that you could come up with a plan that you could bring it into conformance and at the same time keep the same number of boats and probably improve on what you have. Have you thought about that?
So I've worked with Dickinson to try to come up with a reconfiguring. Joe came up with a reconfiguring. I believe Joe's reconfiguring it, which I don't think is practical. And I had Dickinson kind of go through and really lay out his to show the impracticality of trying to access the certain dock spaces in his configuration. But even his had a reduced number of docks. I guess, we would like to, there's certain docks, it's very shallow in there. One of the things submitted was mean low water, which is far out. So certain of those docks that we have there are in well within the mean low water. So if you're trading, we would like to be able to use some of those docks to as well. We just don't know. We don't know what is permissible. They're there. Obviously, the docks are non-conforming. The gray areas. Shallow. Delta. I don't trade illegal things. Those docks are not conforming. So we use some of the shallow docks to reconfigure the underwater. There's no formula to do that.
Yeah, and I can't answer that, but I know that staff would be willing to work with you, and we just did something like this on a property north of you, up in Bolton, and we went around and around, and where we ended up, the dock doctors were trying to build it, and we came up with what was a plan that some might view as it looked bigger. It was way better for the applicant, and for the commission, it more conformed, and we were willing to give a little bit and so on, but to try and bring it more into conformance is our goal.
They have to comply with
We do want to, we're spending a tremendous amount of money on redeveloping the whole property. And so we can't do art. We don't have the money to do art. So we are spending $130,000 on the house, $130,000 on the hotel unit. We're spending money on landscape and stormwater. So to condition the amount of investment that we're making in the rest of the property right now, to make it usable, to make it a fully functioning property, the fully operable property, is really prevents us from making that investment in the dock trail. So what we're looking for is the short-term solution. Long-term, I mean, we do want to do something long-term. But I don't know that we have so much other to tackle there that I think it's like another step for us.
Any further questions? Okay. You can sit down for now while we talk if you want. Does anybody want to start first, or shall I shoot my mouth off against the time fresh?
I could start. It seems, I just said something about what I thought about reconfiguring, that I thought that should be in the future on this property. I would hesitate to, looking at the record, we have a consent order, it was all signed, and I think it should be enforced. If the applicant needs, I don't know if this is possible, but more time. I know that we're approaching a deadline now. Possibly we could give more time to come into conformance. I have no idea. But I don't think we should trade the moorings for non-conforming docks. I think we should be working to get them into compliance.
Well, I could just give you an analogy on that, which is a very poor analogy. If you let me park my car in your neighbor's driveway, can I just drive over his yard, which is illegal, in favor for that right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just trading a legal, whatever, a legal entity for an illegal entity, which you've already decided and tried to enforce and have enforced. It's an order on consent. Just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
But I shouldn't jump in, but I'm just, these guys jump in all the time.
You normally wait to the end, Chairman.
He's out of practice.
And this is an awful
It'll take him
big,
2 months to get back.
and this is an awful big variance being requested, for the docks which are not correct, the square footage is wrong, setbacks are not correct, that, I can't vote for that.
Mark.
I'm having a hard time getting through all this. It seems that there's no request for additional berthing of boats, correct?
No, in fact, I mean.
It's just that the docks are a couple of are built too far out.
To remove the 3 mooring.
Yeah.
So we've actually been reducing the number of berths.
So the docks are, a couple of the docks were lengthened over what was previously grandfathered, and that's the major issue I see. Again, maybe more asking a question.
I'm sorry?
I'm probably asking a question to staff here is, reconfiguration within an existing, in a grandfathered situation, reconfiguration without additional footprint on the water
So the way we
without
look at
an
it-
increase in the boat's berth would be something that would be the most favorable outcome?
So the marina authorizes X number of berthing spaces, so you're allowed to put that many boats in the water. What's allowed for grandfathered docks is reconfigurations that are no more non-conforming. So we make sure there's no more linear footage or square footage, and the setbacks are further offshore from the mean low or mean high. So not necessarily a footprint, but looking at all those, individual aspects of the existing authorized configuration, and then we can redesign within those specs.
The thing that gets me is the linear footage versus the amount of boats. I mean, if you reconfigure, sometimes you wind up with more actual tread space than you would boat space, but it's a tighter and smaller footprint, or a more reasonable footprint. So I'm just thinking that there's another solution here, and I, swapping out for the moorings doesn't begin.
So we would swap out other docks as well, but the way that the Park Commission currently allows reconfiguration does not include moorings. So, we could configure and just leave the 3 mooring boats out there, but they're 175 feet from shore. So, to me, what we're asking for is the Park Commission to consider using moorings as part of the reconfiguration, which there's nothing on the books now that allows that. So we would, it's not just the mooring we're asking for, we would use other dock space as well. We would consider even reducing further the number of berths on the permit.
So whatever that solution you're thinking of is, we don't have it in front of us at this time.
Yeah, so what Dave was going to check with the lawyer, see if there's anything on the books as far as using the moorings to assign some square footage value to them or something, and there was nothing. And so here we are to try to figure that out.
Anyway, do we want to go around, or is somebody have something they want to say?
Carla, do you want to clarify?
I think-
There's an old memo. I'm asking maybe if Carla would like to clarify a little bit, because some of this is legal interpretation. There's something from Martin back in the day. There's some newer interpretation
Right.
of the challenges of trading moorings for dock space.
Right, and this is something that is kind of akin to dealing with nonconformity with ZBAs and things of that nature. You can't increase your nonconformity. And the Park Commission's, my understanding, has only twice dealt with an application such as this. With respect to modification of docks in a marina, and it was a decrease. This is something where you're basically just going to remove part of your legal area and add something illegal, as the commissioner said. And as the commission has done, and at least since 2002, when prior council put together a full-length memo about it, that there's no right to increase an existing nonconformity. Right. And that's, even if you're taking the moorings away, with the way the regulations are now, you're still increasing the nonconformity, and you cannot just do that. There is a required variance to do that, and you have to meet, obviously, all the requirements of the variance.
Yeah, basically this has been decided over and over, that we don't increase the violations on a marina or even a private dock. And we certainly visited it big time when we got the order on consent and said, no, this isn't right, you got to take it back. And you guys were aware of it when you bought it. I can understand why you'd like to try to make the change, but I can't see, you just said it, I can't see giving up something illegal.
I would suggest that we table this and have the applicant come back to staff and try and work something out and figure out a different way to solve the problem.
I don't see what tabling is going to accomplish. What the applicant has asked is for a variance to stay the way he is. No, we're not going to let him stay the way he is, and he can come back with a new configuration, yes. What will table do? We could, it just, I don't...
When we turn it down, it never...
I'm sorry?
It never precludes them from coming back again. Okay. No.
So well, we already have a consent order in place.
Right, but
That's due in June.
Yeah, we already have an order and consent in place.
So,
But what we're going to currently vote on is a modification, not a variance, right? So we're going to be dealing with...
Well, I think both is before, both is before
Modification
you.
requires a variance, which has been...
Okay, so, all right. That's without prejudice of future applications, obviously, correct?
Right, if a resolution is made to approve and then doesn't get the requisite votes, it's denied. Or a resolution could be made to deny it.
Right.
So, we would like to have this as a dock modification. We were told that this was a variance, but we would like this to be a modification where we're reconfiguring the docks. We were told it was a variance. I was told to argue hardship. So the reason I argue hardship is because I was asked to argue hardship. So,
Yeah, well,
I thought we recommended against arguing hardship. When we met in the office, we've been trying to work something out that works, you know. I think what we talked about was the difficulty with proving hardship, since the value you paid for the property was on the commission's actual permit, not what exists in the water today. That's what your financial output was. So to say that you have a financial hardship is a difficult thing, because you paid for what's on the permit, and what the commission is requiring you to do is go back to what's on the permit. So that's a difficult thing. That's why I had recommended to you in our meeting, it's going to be difficult to go for hardship. And so we talked about, is there a possibility of trade, of saying these mooring balls had a certain dockage value? And I said, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but let's talk to the people that know more about it. And after a couple of weeks of looking into it, finding some old memos, and then just looking at the commission statute, it doesn't seem to be that we have the ability to do so.
So going forward, you guys are asking us to come up with another reconfiguration plan that, right?
Well, what the commission is asking you to do is to come into compliance with the order on consent. And then, however you want to reconfigure your docks that doesn't make you more non-conforming is completely your ability to do. Working with Joe, you know, he provided a layout that was no more non-conforming.
So when we go through and we try to reconfigure the dock, past resolving works. Can we use those moorings to reconfigure? Or you guys just want those moorings to stay out there, and I have a boat, 26-foot boat that hangs out here? Or can I use that as part of the reconfiguration?
So, and I think that's what we're talking about today, is you can't use those moorings as a reconfigurement of the docks. They're not, they're two different entities. And that's what, looking back at old memos and talking with council, said we don't have the ability to say that a mooring is a dock.
Right.
And that's where we kind of have at least arrived to in the staff and council's determination, that we don't seem, the commissioners don't seem to have the ability to say, you can trade those 3 moorings in for the non-conforming extra part that you have in your current docks right now. Trading moorings for docks doesn't seem to be okay.
Moorings are navigational construction.
And we don't, when we first met, I said, on the surface, the idea certainly has merit. Your moorings are further out than your existing docks are, so from a navigational standpoint, it makes sense. However, not everything that we have in our toolbox always makes sense. We can't just simply say, that makes a lot of sense and let's go forward. And the bar for you to get a variance to achieve what you want to do, you have a very difficult time doing so, because you were buyer beware, you were aware of what you were getting when you bought it. Was a smaller dock complex than you currently own. You knew that there was an order on consent that required you to bring those docks back into compliance. So that's what you paid for. So to prove that financial hardship is difficult to do. So that's what Joe spent a lot of time trying to work with your existing configuration. What's on actually the approved configuration, and try to get you something that doesn't lessen the amount of berthing spaces you have out there. So I think what council's recommendation of the commissioners is, they don't have the ability to trade your moorings for docks.
It's just not in, I'm sorry, Dave, it's just not in, like you said, their toolbox, it's not in the regulations. They don't have, if they went and did that, someone could come after them and say, well, you didn't have the authority to do it, so it would get kicked out anyway. It's just not currently there.
So how could that change in the future? I mean, I'm just, how do those laws change in the future? If it wasn't clear, how?
It's a process.
That's a process of regulation that's going to take many months.
Well, probably years, because I'm not
years.
sure everybody
Right.
would be in
Yeah.
favor of that. So
Right.
let's take the Lake George Boat Company, for example. Their mooring field takes over 20% of Harris Bay. Would it be great if they traded in all their moorings for extra docks? Some people would say yes, some people would say no. So the average person that has a dock, let's say I have a dock, a single family, 40 feet and a mooring that's out there, and I say, I never wanted to use my mooring anyway, I'd like to double the length of my dock. So now you take one berthing space on the mooring and you add 2 boat spaces on that, now they're running one out. So this just explodes, and we've had this conversation for hours at the office trying to figure out how to make your property, to give you the maximum value of your property without pushing something that the commission has the authority to do illegal. So we've talked about the ability for us to do commercial variances, right? It's very difficult to do because it's a very high bar. And we don't have that ability, from my perspective, I'm not a commissioner, to grant a variance on financial hardship. We don't, from a legal standpoint, seem to have the ability to trade mooring balls for docks. And to do that, to get that legal authority would be a tremendous process, and I'm not sure that the commissioners nor the general public would want that to happen, because it'd be an explosion in dock size around the lake, even though it would be a reduction in the number of mooring balls out there. So that ability would be years away at best. So what we want to do is figure out, and Joe's very good at working with dock builders to figure out something that might work better for you than what you currently have. But that's kind of, I think, where we currently are from at least staff perspective.
So you get the feeling that this application is not going to be approved. Okay? Let's cut through the chase.
No, I understand that.
Well, yeah.
Dave and I had that conversation. And so I guess I just thought I'd get in front of the whole board.
Right. And the first order of business is you have an immediate problem with this consent order.
Correct. I'm understanding that.
So you need to address that first. And then, at the same time, if you can, come up with a configuration that's compliant. End of discussion.
To make it
Okay.
easier for the applicant, wouldn't it be better for him at this point to withdraw his application?
Right, I was going to do that.
And then come back?
To withdraw the application?
Yeah.
Well, rather than have it turned down, withdraw your application and then come back once the dust is settled is a bad thing, but
I guess I just misunderstood when we had a conversation that I guess I was under the impression, or maybe hopeful, that the board had some control of maybe some jurisdiction or leniency on using the warrant.
right. Yeah, and we can't do that, so, either we can just tell you, we can tell you legally, or we can tell you here and say, no, we can't approve it, so if you want us to turn it down, then you start from scratch one again, whatever you want to do. I would just say, my own advice, and I'm not a lawyer, my own advice is the easiest way for you is to say, okay, I withdraw this, I would like to withdraw my application at this point, and then work with Joe or whatever else at another solution to your problem. Because we can't trade the moorings for illegal docks, we can't do it. And that makes sense to me. Does anybody on staff think that I'm thinking wrong on that?
No, this is the first time in my history that we've painted ourselves, quote unquote, into a corner where there's just physically there's no elbows in that black line. And your family's been on the lake, and every project you've ever done's been a good project.
Yeah, I think he
You'll figure out how
understands
to get
that.
through this.
But does anybody disagree with what I would suggest?
Withdrawing the application?
No, it sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, let's be reasonable here. These guys are trying to run a business. It was hey, as my grandson says, a man's got to try, right? If you can get, yeah, that's right.
It's a very fair question, and we didn't have an answer, but through some research, we figured out we just don't have the authority. But I think it was good that you came in, and even for our commissioners to go through this discussion, because it's not an idea that's been vetted since I've been around, and I'm sure probably a lot longer.
So I guess.
What I would suggest, rather than have us deny your variance, We've explained what the problem are. I'd rather see you have another chance to either modify it or come in with some other choice or whatever you, but to do that, you have to be willing to withdraw and say you don't want us to vote on it today.
Is there a time limit on this?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Then we don't need to pass a resolution. We don't need to say no. Nobody said no.
We said we can.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're making the place look nice. There's no question about that.
Right. Law enforcement.
Oh, well,
Yeah, get on the ball.
I've been busy. Okay. Hang on, I got a resolution.
There you go.
April Law. Let's see if we know her. Okay, Resolution 2019-17.
With you guys, I haven't done before.
Whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met April 30th, 2019 to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's Law Enforcement Program, and whereas active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report, now therefore be it resolved that the Commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee, which does include the fact that we will have a Marine Patrol on the lake as of tomorrow's date for the balance of the season and going uphill from there. And we got a deal on a boat. So now therefore be it resolved, the Commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Walt, you're the only one here, or Tony, anybody want to make a public comment?
Say something.
Tony, is the new paper
Dredge,
out yet?
English Brook.
We're on hiatus.
Delta.
You're on hiatus.
So, right up May 17th.
I got a quarter burn in my pocket, so I got 3 weeks. I mean, 4 trips to Lake George Village.
Motion?
Motion to...
So made.
Seconded.
Motion there to adjourn. Seconded, okay.
I
All in favor? Aye.
Can't afford that.